The sky burned red with fire and smoke. Above the battlefield, Queen Zalara stood tall on her war chariot, dressed in black and gold armor. Her eyes glowed like molten stars. Her voice thundered across the field as she led her army, the Varnak, warriors, into their final strike. She had never lost a battle, never bowed to anyone. She was called the Iron Flame by her people, and the Death Queen by her enemies. But even flames can be smothered. From the cliffs above, a surprise attack rained down. Giant plasma cannons fired from hidden ships, tearing the ground apart. Explosions shook the land. Her soldiers screamed and scattered in chaos. Zalara raised her sword, ready to fight. Then came the blast. One hit her directly. The force threw her across the field like a broken doll. She hit the rocks hard. Her armor cracked, her legs twisted. Beneath her, with a sickening sound. She couldn't move. She tried to stand. She couldn't. Pain shot through her body like lightning. Her soldiers retreated, unaware their queen had fallen. The enemy moved in to finish the job, but one soldier remained behind. Not a Varnak warrior, a human slave. Jace was a former Earth soldier, captured years ago during a failed rebellion. Since then, he had lived in chains, serving as a servant and punching bag for the Varnak Empire. He had once served Queen Zalara in her court, carrying her armor, cleaning her boots, and taking her insults. She had called him less than an insect. Now she lay broken before him. Jace climbed down from a ditch, hiding from enemy eyes. He looked at the queen. Her leg armor was bent inwards. Blood leaked from her side. Her helmet was cracked. He could leave her, let her die. She wouldn't do the same for him. But he couldn't. He stepped closer. Zalara's eyes opened. Her voice was weak but sharp. "You dare approach me?" Jace didn't answer. He kneeled beside her and looked at her wounds. "You're bleeding. You can't move," he said. She spat. "Leave me. I'd rather die than be touched by a human." Jace looked toward the sound of enemy troops closing in. "You'll get your wish if I walk away," he replied. He tore a piece of his own shirt and pressed it against her bleeding side. She flinched. "I didn't ask for your help," she snapped. "You never did," Jace said, tying the cloth tightly. She tried to push him away with her arm, but her strength was fading. "I should kill you for this," she muttered. Jace smirked. "You'll have to survive first." He lifted her onto his back, one arm under her legs and the other supporting her shoulders. She was taller than him, heavier in her armor, but he didn't stop. The sounds of enemy boots echoed in the distance. Drones scanned the sky. Jace ducked behind a burning vehicle, panting. The queen groaned in pain. "Put me down," she said. "No, you'll die." "Maybe," he replied, "but you first if I do nothing." He kept moving, through smoke and fire, through broken metal and dying soldiers, through memories of torture, chains, and pain. Still, he carried her. After what felt like hours, he reached the edge of the battlefield. A small cave hid behind a fallen ridge. Jace slid inside, lowering Zalara gently onto a flat rock. She was unconscious now. Her breathing was shallow. He looked at her. This fierce queen who had once ordered men burned alive, now weak, bleeding, and silent. He grabbed a medical kit he had stolen weeks ago and began cleaning her wounds. She woke briefly, eyes foggy. "Why?" she whispered. "Why save me?" Jace paused. He didn't have an answer. Maybe it was because he was still human. Maybe it was because no one, not even a queen, should die like this. "Rest," he said simply. "You'll need strength." She closed her eyes, confused and broken. Jace leaned against the wall of the cave, exhausted. Outside, the battle was over. The queen had fallen. But her story was only beginning. Because the slave she had hated was the only one who chose to save her. The sun rose over the wasteland like a dying ember, red, slow, and full of heat. Jace woke first. His back ached from sleeping on cold stone. His muscles burned from carrying the queen through fire and blood. But pain wasn't new to him. He had lived through whips, hunger, and humiliation as a slave of the Varnak Empire. Now he was something else. A protector. He turned to the queen. Solara still lay on the rock shelf, her body wrapped in cloth strips, her legs motionless. Her long, black hair was dusty and tangled, her lips pale. Yet even broken, she looked powerful, like a lioness in chains. She stirred. "Water," she whispered. Jace handed her a small bottle from his satchel. She drank slowly, her golden eyes watching him the entire time. "You're still here," she said. "Yeah. You could have left. I know." Her gaze sharpened. "Then why didn't you?" Jace stood and looked outside the cave. The battlefield was far behind them now, smoke rising like ghosts in the distance. "I couldn't leave you to die," he said. "Even if you would have let me die in your place." Solara said nothing. She hated the truth in his words. By midday, Jace had built a stretcher using broken metal pipes and canvas from a wrecked drone nearby. He laid her on it gently. Her jaw tightened in pain, but she didn't scream. She never screamed. Jace pulled the stretcher with thick cables across dry, cracked land. Each step was slow. The ground burned his boots. Jagged rocks tore at his legs. The heat made the air shimmer. Still, he walked. Still, he pulled. For hours. At one point, he stopped under the shade of a broken wall. He handed her a ration bar. She stared at it. "This is Varnak army food." "I stole it," he replied. "From my own people?" "No," he said flatly. "From what's left of them." Solara's face twisted. She was silent as she chewed the dry food. Then, quietly, she asked, "How did you end up a slave?" Jace was surprised. She had never asked that before. No Varnak had. He sat on a rock and looked at the dirt. "I was a soldier on Terra Nova. We resisted your expansion. You crushed us. My family was killed. I was taken. That was 5 years ago." She didn't reply. He didn't expect her to. But she surprised him again. "I never saw your kind as more than tools," she admitted. "Useful. Replaceable. I was wrong." Jace looked at her. Why the sudden change of heart? She closed her eyes. "Because you're carrying me when no one else would." They kept moving. Later that night, Jace saw lights in the distance, flickering near the remains of a downed Varnak outpost. They needed medicine, food, shelter. He hid Solara beneath a rocky ledge and crept toward the outpost with only a knife and courage. His heart pounded. If he was seen, they'd shoot on sight. But luck was on his side. He found a supply case inside a ruined tent. Medical kits, clean water, bandages, and even energy packs. He grabbed everything he could carry and ran back into the darkness. But he wasn't fast enough. A scout spotted him. A red laser bolt burned into the ground just inches from his foot. He dropped low and rolled behind a rusted hull. 2 more shots came. Jace ran into the darkness, using the terrain to hide. His arms ached. His breath came in gasps. But he didn't stop. Because he had someone waiting for him. Someone who needed him. He returned to the cave with a gash on his arm and a bruised shoulder. Solara's eyes widened when she saw the blood. "What happened?" "Found supplies," he said, dropping them beside her. "You're injured." "Better me than you." She looked at him differently now. For the first time in her life, she felt something strange. Guilt. That night, as Jace bandaged her wounds with clean wrappings, Solara asked, "You know I can never repay you, right?" Jace nodded. "I don't want repayment," he said. "I want you to live." She looked at him quietly, then whispered, "I will remember this, Jace. Every step, every sacrifice." He smiled slightly, and for the first time since the war began, she called him by name. The fire crackled softly in the cave. Orange light flickered across stone walls and quiet faces. Night had fallen, and with it came a silence that felt heavier than any chain Jace had ever worn. He sat across from Queen Solara, sharpening a small blade with a piece of metal scrap. His shirt was torn, his arms bruised and bleeding from yesterday's run. But he didn't complain. He never did. Solara watched him in silence. Her legs still refused to move. She had regained some strength, but her body was still broken. Yet, something inside her had started to heal, and that scared her more than the wounds. "Your hands," she said suddenly. Jace looked up. "What about them?" "They are covered in scars." He glanced down. "From the camps, the mines, the beatings." She lowered her eyes. "I never looked before. That's because I was never a person to you." Her face twitched. "That was how I was raised. Weakness was punished. Mercy was mocked." Jace nodded. "Yeah, I remember. I saw it in your throne room. I cleaned blood off your boots more than once." Solara flinched. She remembered too. She remembered spitting on his face when he brought her wine too slowly. She remembered calling him animal. She remembered laughing when the guards kicked him. Now he was feeding her, cleaning her wounds, and protecting her like she was his own kin. She didn't understand it. "Why do you keep helping me?" she asked again, softer this time. Jace put the blade down. "Because I made a promise." "To who?" "Myself." He stared into the fire. "When I was first captured, I swore I'd never become like the people who hurt me. I promised I'd never be cruel even when I had a chance to be." Solara looked away, ashamed. "You had that chance. I was helpless. You could have left me." "I thought about it," he admitted. She smiled sadly. "Why didn't you?" Jace didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Because I saw something in your eyes. For the first time, you looked human." The silence between them grew deeper. Then, Solara reached for a water flask, but her fingers were trembling. Jace quickly moved to help her drink. She looked away as she sipped, embarrassed by her weakness. When she finished, she muttered, "I don't deserve this." "Maybe not," Jace said quietly. "But you need it." Solara sighed. "I never thought a human could teach me anything." He raised an eyebrow. "We do more than clean floors, you know." She chuckled, then quickly stopped herself. It felt strange to laugh. With him. Later, as the fire died down, Solara whispered, "I had a sister once." Jace blinked. "You?" "She died in training. She wasn't strong enough. Our mother made me watch." Jace swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." Solara looked at him with tired eyes. "You know everything about me now, don't you?" "Not everything." She stared at the flames. "I was trained to rule, to fight, to kill, but I was never taught how to feel." Jace was quiet for a while, then said, "You're feeling now." Solara nodded slowly. "And it hurts." That night the cave felt warmer than before, not from the fire, but from something invisible. Trust. Something neither of them had known in years. The next morning, Solara woke to find Jace already up, boiling water, preparing for another long day of travel. She called his name. He turned. "Thank you," she said. He gave a small nod. "You're welcome." Then for the first time she did something she had never done for a human. She smiled, not out of mockery, not out of victory, but out of respect. And Jace, once a nameless slave, smiled back, because in that moment, she was no longer just a queen, she was a woman, and she was finally learning what it meant to be human. The wind howled across the wasteland like a warning. Dust swirled in the air as storm clouds gathered above the canyon. The temperature dropped, sharply, and the birds that usually circled overhead were nowhere to be seen. Jace felt it in his bones. Trouble was coming. He crouched beside the fire, tightening the straps on his boots. His hands moved fast, sharp with habit. The cave had kept them hidden for days, but no hiding place lasted forever. Behind him, Queen Solara leaned against the cave wall, wrapped in an old thermal cloak. Her legs still didn't move, but her face was alert, sharp again, like the soldier she used to be. "Something's wrong," she said, scanning the horizon through a small crack in the rock. Jace nodded. I saw movement last night, 2 drones, quiet ones. Scouts, she muttered. They found us. He looked at her. Then we leave. You're not strong enough to carry me that far again. Jace stood tall, adjusting the harness around. His shoulders. I'll find a way. She looked at him, the firelight reflecting in her golden eyes. No, she said. This time I stay. You go. The words hit him hard. Jace stepped closer. You're not giving up. I'm being smart, she replied. They're coming for me, not you. Leave now. You've done enough. He stared at her. I didn't come this far just to walk away. I'm not your queen anymore. You never were. She blinked. I stayed because I wanted to, he said. Not because of a crown. You needed help. I gave it. I'm not stopping now. She closed her eyes. You're a fool, Jace smirked. Yeah, but I'm your fool. The sun began to rise, but the sky didn't brighten. Dark ships approached, floating low, their engines humming like the growl of beasts. Red lights blinked in their underbellies. The Varnak had returned, but not to rescue. To replace. The Empire believed Zalara was dead or useless. Her enemies within had waited for this moment, to erase her and take her throne. Now they came, weapons ready, eyes cold. Jace saw them before they landed. He grabbed his rifle and positioned himself at the cave entrance. Zalara watched him from behind. You'll die if you fight them alone. I'll die if I don't. The first group arrived. 5 Varnak warriors in black armor armed with sonic blasters and plasma spears. Jace waited until they entered the canyon. Then he fired. His shots were quick, precise. One dropped instantly, another staggered. The rest ducked behind rocks. Return fire lit up the sky. Jace dove behind a ledge, heart pounding. Dust exploded around him. One blast grazed his arm, burning through cloth and skin. But he didn't stop. He fought like a man who had nothing to lose, because he had already lost everything. Except her. Back in the cave, Zalara dragged herself forward with her arms. Teeth clenched. Her body screamed in pain, but she kept moving. She reached the front just in time to see Jace take another hit, this one in the leg. He collapsed behind a rock, panting. She screamed his name. Jace! He looked back, blood on. His face, eyes burning with fire. Stay down, he yelled. I've got this. More Varnak soldiers dropped in from above. They began to surround the cave. Jace crawled forward, aiming at them all, knowing he couldn't win, but he didn't run. He never ran. Then something happened. A strange vibration filled the air. The warriors paused, confused. From the cave, a soft, golden light began to glow. Zalara's body shimmered. Her skin, her armor, even her breath. She pushed herself forward again, past the pain, past the fear, until she was beside Jace. She placed her hand on his burned leg, and for the first time, in her life, she healed. It wasn't perfect, but the bleeding stopped. Jace looked at her, shocked. I don't know how, she whispered. But it worked. The Varnak soldiers stared in disbelief. Their queen, injured, humiliated, had just shown mercy. They didn't understand it, they feared it. They hesitated, and in that moment, Jace stood up again and fired. By the time the dust settled, only silence remained. Some enemies had fled, others had dropped their weapons. Zalara sat slumped against the rock, breath ragged. Jace dropped beside her. You did it, he said. No, she replied, her voice barely a whisper. We did. In that moment, they were no longer queen and slave. They were partners, survivors, and something much stronger than either of them alone. The rain came slow at first, soft drops falling on scorched soil. It was the first rain in months, and it felt like a blessing. Jace sat by the cave entrance, his arm bandaged, eyes fixed on the distant mountains. The battle was over, for now, but the fire inside him hadn't cooled. Behind him, Queen Zalara lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her golden eyes were softer now. Her voice, once a blade, had dulled into something calmer. Something almost human. She watched Jace in silence. She didn't recognize him anymore, and in truth, she didn't recognize herself either. Hours passed. The fire crackled low. Rain tapped gently on the rocks above. Zalara broke the silence. You should have left me. Jace didn't turn around. I didn't. She sat up slowly, her back still sore, legs still weak. Why? He exhaled. Because I saw something in you, something real. She frowned. What could you possibly see in me? He turned to her now. A leader who forgot how to feel, and a woman who's finally learning to remember. Zalara looked away. Her throat tightened. She had killed thousands, burned cities, crushed rebellions. And yet, this one man's words cut deeper than any blade. I've done terrible things, she said. Jace nodded. So have I. But you didn't lead an empire. No, he said, but I watched mine fall. And I let myself hate you for years. He paused, then added, but hate is easy. Healing isn't. She closed her eyes. Do you think I can ever be forgiven? That's not for me to decide. Then who? He looked at her. You. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Zalara did something that would have shocked her old generals. She reached for a worn cloth and gently cleaned the dirt off Jace's boots. He blinked. What are you doing? She didn't look at him. Something I should have done long ago. The next day, Zalara insisted on trying to walk. Her legs were still damaged, but her spirit burned stronger than it ever had before. Jace helped her, stand holding her waist as she gritted her teeth. One step, he said, just one. She nodded, sweat on her brow. Let's begin. It took the entire morning, but by noon she managed 4 steps. Each one shook her body. Each one shook her past. Later, as she rested, Zalara looked at Jace and said, when we return to the Empire, things will change. He raised an eyebrow. We? She nodded. I won't lead without you. He laughed softly. You want a slave on your throne? I want a man who taught me mercy beside me, she answered. I want a voice that speaks truth when I forget it. He stared at her, unsure if he was dreaming, but she meant every word. That evening they lit a small fire under the stars. No palace, no throne, just 2 souls learning to exist again. Zalara looked up at the night sky. Do you believe in second chances? Jace stared at the flames. I didn't, until I met you after you fell. She smiled, a small, tired smile. I think, she said, my fall was the best thing that ever happened to me. The wind whispered across the land, and the queen who once ruled by fear now found power in kindness, not weakness. Change had come, not by sword, not by war, but by the hands of a human she once called nothing. The stars were still the same, cold, silent, watching. But something had changed beneath them. A queen who once ruled with iron and flame now sat quietly on the edge of a stolen transport shuttle. Her long black cloak wrapped around her shoulders, her once proud armor scarred and faded. Her crown was gone. By her side stood a man with no armor, no rank, just tired eyes, steady hands, and a heart that refused to let her die. Jace. They were heading back to the empire she once controlled, as fugitives, not to reclaim the throne, with fire, but to stop the fire from spreading. Inside the shuttle, Jace studied a digital map. We'll land 5 clicks outside the capital, he said. The old rebel tunnels still run beneath the palace. That's our way in. Zalara nodded, slowly. Her legs, still stiff, could walk now with support. What happens when we get inside, she asked. That depends, Jace said. On whether they see you as queen or traitor. Zalara didn't flinch. Let them see what they want. I'm not going back for the crown. He looked at her. You sure? She met his eyes. I'm going back for the people. The shuttle landed at night. The city of Varnicore glowed in the distance. Bright towers, flying ships, guards on every corner. But beneath all the light was fear. The new ruler, General Vorn, had declared Zalara dead. He had taken the throne and doubled the chains on every world. He told the galaxy the Iron Queen had fallen and weakness had killed her. He didn't know she was walking straight back into his palace and bringing with her the man she once owned. The tunnels were dark and damp. Jace led the way, flashlight in hand. Zalara followed, one hand on the wall, the other gripping a small blade. Every step echoed with memories of pain, of power, of things that needed to be faced. At one point, Jace stopped at a metal door. This leads straight into the war hall, he whispered. Beyond that is the throne room. Zalara nodded. Let's finish this. The doors creaked open. Inside, the hall was empty, except for one man, General Vorn. He stood in full battle armor, tall and smug, a plasma blade hanging from his belt. Well, he said, smiling, I was wondering when you'd come crawling back. Jace raised his weapon. Zalara held up her hand. No, she said. This is my fight. Vorn laughed. You, half broken, limping through my doors like some pitiful ghost? I came to stop you, she said calmly. You gave me power the moment you fell. The people believe in me now. They fear you, she corrected. But I don't. Vorn sneered and drew his weapon. You should. He lunged. Jace moved to help, but Zalara stepped forward first, dodging the first blow, deflecting the second. Her movements were slower than they once were, but each one was fueled with purpose. She wasn't fighting to rule anymore. She was fighting to protect. She caught his arm and drove her blade into the weak point in his armor. Vorn staggered. You were always soft, he gasped. No, she said, pushing him back. I was broken, but now I'm whole. He fell to the ground. The guards outside rushed in, weapons raised. Jace stood protectively in front of Zalara, but she raised her hand, and they stopped. They looked at her scars, her strength, the man beside her, and they listened. I am not your ruler anymore, she said, but I am still your voice. And I say no more war, no more chains, no more lies. She turned to Jace. This is the man who saved me, the one I once called a slave. Jace looked shocked, but she smiled. I now call him brother. The guards lowered their weapons. One by one they knelt, not to a queen, to a changed soul, to a leader reborn. The throne room stood silent. No cheers, no music. Only the sound of slow footsteps echoing on polished stone. Queen Zalara walked, not carried, not dragged, through the heart of the empire she once ruled. Each step was heavy, her legs still healing, her body weaker than before. But her presence had never been stronger. The throne loomed ahead, cold, high, and untouched since the day she was declared dead. She stopped at its base and turned her back to it. Jace stood behind her, quiet, as always. He had no title, no armor, no crown, but every person in that room saw what he was, the man who saved the queen, and reminded her what it meant to feel. Zalara's voice filled the chamber. I was once feared across galaxies. They called me a warrior, a conqueror, a destroyer. She looked down at her hands. I built an empire of control, of silence, of suffering. Then she looked up, her eyes sweeping across the gathered officials, guards, and council members. And I let it all break, until I was the one left broken. Gasps echoed through the chamber. But in the ashes of my fall, I was saved. She turned to Jace. By someone I once saw as beneath me. Jace shifted, unsure. She stepped toward him. This man carried my body when I could no longer walk. He defended me when I was helpless. He healed me, without ever lifting a weapon. She took his hand and raised it. The strongest warrior I've ever known is not one who ruled with fear, but one who chose compassion when he had every reason to hate. The room remained still. Then one voice whispered, "What does this mean, Your Majesty?" Solara looked at the throne. Then she turned her back to it again. "It means the old reign is over." She took off the golden sigil on her chest and placed it on the throne's seat. "I will no longer rule with a crown. I will lead with a cause." A hush spread. "I name Jace, once a slave, now my equal, as first speaker of the people. His voice will be mine, and no law shall pass without his approval." Jace's eyes widened. I'm not. You are," she said. "You already led me back from darkness." Outside the palace, a crowd began to form. Word had spread that the queen had returned, but she was different, that she walked side by side with a human, that she knelt beside the sick, that she smiled at children, that she wept when she saw the damage her empire had caused, and they believed. Weeks passed. The changes were slow, but real. Slave camps were shut down. Borders reopened. Peace talks began, with planets once thought enemies. And in a quiet corner of the city, a small school was built, where children of all species learned together. At its gate stood a plaque, "To the human who taught a queen to change." One night, under the same stars where it all began, Solara and Jace sat on a quiet rooftop. She looked at him. "You could leave now. Go back to your world. Live free." Jace looked out at the lights of the city. "This is my world now," she smiled. "You really believe we can fix this?" "I believe we already started." She leaned back, her eyes peaceful. "I used to believe strength was everything." "What do you believe now?" he asked. She turned to him, voice soft. "I believe in second chances." And so the queen who had fallen rose again, not as a ruler of fear, but as a symbol of change. Beside her stood the man who reminded her that true power was in choosing to protect, not control.